Hi friends, Pastor Steve here, just kind of catching you up on chapter 5 in Leading with a Limp, Facing Crisis, which that's kind of a leader's life, crisis big and small. My small crisis for the morning was I had copied out the guide sheets for today for our lunch gathering, and had taken one of the sheets and put my red ink notes on so I knew what I would say and when and the stories I would tell, and I put it someplace where I knew I could find it this morning, and it's still in that place where I can't find it. And so I had to kind of go by what's in my brain, which is fine. Small crisis. But leadership is just full of crisis that comes up. When crisis comes up, we figure out, what are we going to do with this? How do we react? How do we respond? And so we can either courageously face courage, or we can find somebody to blame. Greek word for crisis sounds just like the English word crisis, is to sift. And things get sifted out, and we either decide, are we going to have courage, going to go this way, or are we going to find somebody to blame so we don't feel responsible? And he's got a line in chapter 5 I thought very important. I see it all the time, certainly in national politics, but also it's just true in people's personal lives. Most leaders will do anything to escape a situation that could mark them with blame. I mean, if it's my fault, I'm not a good leader, people won't follow me. And so there's this trying to escape. Actually, that's not true. Good leaders admit mistakes and learn from them. But anyway, he goes on to talk about control. And when we face a crisis and there's kind of a cowardice within us, we're not quite sure how to handle it. And so we just quick want to control it and fix it and get it over with and make sure no one knows what's going on and just control the whole situation. And the problem is, when we use all of our energy to control, we don't have much energy left to work with our team and actually help solve the problem. It can really be really counterproductive. Then he also makes an interesting point, which I resonate with at this point in my life. He said, a leader will trust the goodness of God only to the degree that he has a history of brokenness and redemption. So, 35 years into my work as a pastor, I've made enough mistakes and experienced enough brokenness and had God kind of step in and help me learn lessons and grow up and get back on my feet. I can trust that God will be good to me when crisis comes and it feels like I don't know what's going to happen, and I did make a mistake and I am to blame in some of this thing, and I know God can handle that. But that comes because I have a history, a memory of what God can do in crisis in my life. He makes a big point in this chapter about brokenness is really important for a leader to admit and realize and live into when you're in crisis. We're all broken. And he makes an interesting statement toward the beginning of the chapter. You know, leadership is really absurd because you're leading people and you can never keep them all happy. They will never all be pleased. Don't even bother trying, right? So what do? Do you just kind of control the situation, control people that you're working with so they pretend they agree with you? Will you just flight? Will you just say, I'm done with this. Forget it. Or will you go, you know what? I'm broken. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm not going to keep everybody happy. And I don't always make the right decision. There's brokenness in me. And he talks about embracing 4 realities of brokenness. First one is, on my own, I am not sufficient to make things work on my own. I'm not. I need other people. Number 2, my failures will harm others and myself. And that's the kind of a weight or burden of leadership. When I fail, those failures are not just going to affect me, they will affect the people I'm responsible for leading. And that brings some heaviness and can bring brokenness into our lives. When I try to limit the damage done by quitting or pushing for control, I'm actually going to cause more harm. If I admit I'm broken, I made mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and work toward a better future, things are going to turn out okay. And true humility isn't that you think you can't do anything on your own or can't handle things or have no self-confidence. It's that you call out for help from God and from other people. That's true humility. I can't do it by myself. I need God's help. I need the help of people around me. And if we understand that there's brokenness in our lives, we accept these 4 realities, we'll be a lot better leaders. And then he makes a point, and actually we didn't talk about this today when we were gathered in person, but the more we are freed by the love of God from the tentacles of shame and blame, so once we realize we're forgiven through Jesus Christ completely, there's no blame or shame left. Once we fear that, then the less likely we are to give in to fear during a crisis. Because you know what? If I make a mistake, I can apologize, I can ask for forgiveness. It's the way life works. Then at the end he talks about confidence, which is the good story. And true confidence isn't, I can do it myself, but it's true confidence is courage that's been humbled. So you don't think too highly of yourself. You don't think more lowly of yourself than you should, but you have a proper estimation of who you are and your abilities. And you say, you know what, I don't know if I'm right. I'm not sure I'm chosen the path that's the best, but after reflection, feedback, and debate and prayer, this is the path we're going to take. Let's go. And that's true confidence. There's humility even while you're leading. You're leading with humility. And then he makes a basic point, and I think most leaders underestimate the power of this, is if the people that we're leading already know the worst about us, they know our mistakes, they know our failures, they know our weaknesses, then when we come to crisis, we don't have to pretend we're the best leader in the world, because we're not. And we can ask questions, we can try and ferret what's going on, we can bring people into the team, we quit looking for blame in other people, and we can take the log, so to speak, out of our own eyes so we can actually see what's going on. We can make some good decisions. The questions today, we talked about our table, has to do with talking about crisis in the past and crisis in the present. And we spent some time, quite a bit of time actually, thinking about the biggest crisis we faced as a leader in our past. The biggest one, whatever it happened to be. And then talk about the ways in which, because of that, you felt broken. Really important for us as leaders to be able to be honest that when that big crisis came, and these are the facts, but this is how I felt broken. Because if I lose all confidence in my own abilities, that brokenness I need to be aware of, because it's going to affect how I lead. Or if I feel broken because I've been betrayed, or if I'm feeling broken because I've invested all my trust in these people and they're doing the best they can, but it's just not working. What's the brokenness inside that's come from that big crisis back there? And then, related but different, as you tried to work your way through this crisis, you had some kind of a process that you were going through. It took a certain amount of time. Did you experience more brokenness as you went through the process? I remember guiding a church through what I fondly call the worship wars, in which there were people who wanted traditional style worship and people who wanted contemporary modern worship. And we had a task force. We talked through all that stuff. And the more we got into it, I thought, oh, this would be great. We'll talk it through. It'll be fine. Well, it worked out, but the more we talked it through, the more intense it got. And the harder it got. And the more pain and grief there was for people. We made it through, but wow, the process itself was as hurtful and harmful as the whole issue itself. It's amazing. And then think about your biggest crisis in the past. Were you tempted towards certain things like, oh, I'm tempted to be a coward and just run away. I don't want to deal with this. Or are you tempted to be rigid, just clamp down and said, we're going to do this today. I don't care what you say. I know what's right. Were you narcissistic and you managed the crisis only thinking about what would be best for you personally? Did you just go hide? Or did you go, well, whatever happens, happens. There's nothing I can really do about it. What were you tempted by during the crisis? And then hopefully you were able to draw from courage and depth and gratitude and openness and hope during that crisis at some certain points. And what was it that helped you access that rather than just slide off and kind of self-destruct? So important things to think about. Crisis in the past. How'd you react? What happened to you? What was the brokenness you experienced? This is really important to identify as a leader, because if you had a major crisis and you're not honest about the brokenness you experienced, you will bring that brokenness with you to the next crisis today. If we identify it, we can talk about it, pray it through with the Lord, we learn lessons, it's going to be great. And He will actually be preparing us for a crisis that will be coming in the future. We also talked about living in the present. By what's the biggest crisis you face right now? And our table, one of the guys, people said, well, does family count? And it does, doesn't it? As leaders, we're profoundly affected not just at our place of work or leadership, but we're affected by our family life. And if there's crisis in either one, it affects the other, doesn't it? So what's the biggest crisis you're facing now? And what's your initial reaction? Crisis comes, bang. I want to go hide, or I want to face this thing. What's your initial reaction? And why? Why do you want to hide? Why do you have the courage to face it? Important things to think about for yourself. And then there are some things in your current crisis that are helping you not try and control people's lives and not finding somebody to blame. There are some things that are helping you just kind of take your hands off of blame and shame. And what's really helping you move forward? And if you're in a present crisis and you're not moving forward well at all, you may need to say, I wonder what would help me make it through this crisis in a better way? Great question to ask. So this week about crisis, next week chapter 6. And if you can be able to be in person on Tuesday, that'll be great. If not, you can catch up. You can actually join online, look for Dave's email that's coming. Or you can catch these chapter summaries later. But discussion, sharing the stories, very, very important. So please, as much as you can, take advantage of that. Thanks. Catch you next week.